So how do you get back?
Well, I'm actually going to stay in the city for a few days.
Hello, Mark.
Coming in at the very last
How did
minute.
the speed dating go?
It was smooth.
Let's take a quick picture. Marag, do you want to be in it with us?
Yeah.
Oh,
In it or take it either way? We'd like you in it with us.
I'll take it first and then somebody. Come on, somebody else.
You should have Chandra here.
Oh, you want to be that close?
Yeah, I do. I want to be, we're post-COVID.
Are you joining us here?
Yes, I am.
Sorry, sorry, I don't know each other that well, so I'm not a hugger, so that's what's just me. I'm scared right now.
I'll let you one, hopefully it's good enough.
It's great, whatever.
You want to put on heels, try to hug me. It's like,
Nice to meet you.
no, I got to hug you anytime. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Actually, I'm going to bother you to take one more in mine. So for my team,
All right,
they want to post something today.
Yeah, that's good. I'm
Yeah.
gonna take off this thing. Actually,
Good
we
one.
better just, yeah. All right, here we go. Girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy.
There you go.
But we have this.
Can I have a volunteer to come and take a photo for us?
Yeah, because we want Marag in it too.
I gotta get in.
Couple.
Pass the phone. Yeah,
Okay, I'll give you
pass
that.
it.
Okay, I feel like we've done something impressive. I don't know how much we have,
People are
but
thinking, is this a photo session or is it a...
1, 2, 3. There you go.
Thank
We
you.
have to amplify the amazing event.
And you can share with us.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Yeah. But I sent out an email this morning to everybody, so hopefully,
We have a...
this is a really tough spot straight after lunch.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Everybody's down in the courtyard. I
5.
think we
We
need
pull a
to
chair away.
make them.
Marag, are you sitting
The
up with
weather's
us?
pretty nice today.
Oh, yeah, we're forward. We sit there.
No, I'm gonna.
You want us to start this way? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I don't even need to be sitting here.
You're sitting.
Let's switch over because that feels like after that.
Yeah.
Oh, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
you're
okay.
good. They can match us up to the photo. I think I'm the redhead. I think
Yeah, I'll give it a few minutes anyway, because normally,
Yeah, they go out.
like 5 minutes starting a little bit late and then finish up in your bag.
But you have time.
I have time.
Yeah, go to the bathroom. You know where it is,
And
right?
then right after.
Yes.
So
Where
I
should I
have
sit
to
now?
run over in the corner.
There's a water fountain back here.
We will finish at 2:25.
25.
Yeah.
Excellent.
What do you think? I think
We
you might be.
don't, we don't need to, I can.
If you're. Brad was hoping that we could go like 15 minutes over.
Yeah, I am talking.
You've got some good stories.
I have a lot of good stories, not always appropriate stories for this guy.
Can we turn off the
We
mics?
can. Today's world is a little.
All right, there's some
dangerous.
interesting stories coming, people. We have to, what's said on tour stays on tour, what's said in the room stays in the room.
Set the expectation bar a little high.
Oh, well.
I like to keep it low. Step over.
Stretching targets, come on in.
Yeah. What a great venue, by the way. It's a great event.
It looks like a fabulous event.
When did you get in, Gary?
I got in last night, so I
Okay.
came in, I got here a couple hours ago just to kind of check things out a little bit. Looks great. Congrats.
The building's amazing. And
It's so
That's
good for
phenomenal.
this kind of thing.
Yeah.
yeah, it really is. There's so many spaces. And obviously the weather's fabulous.
I was going to say it's fabulous.
A little bit cooler yesterday,
Yeah.
so people could be out in the courtyard without too many problems.
Yeah.
It's a little bit hot out there and with the speed networking, but
I thought it's beautiful. It's been so great, Marag. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Oh, that's not true.
I just heard cats. Speak first.
We can just start.
Maybe we should.
No, yeah, we gotta
Oh,
wait.
Chandra is.
Yeah, because I was going to start at, sorry, it's going to start at 1:35, so that,
People can come in.
yeah.
What do you work on?
Where I work?
Yeah.
In Copenhagen.
Copenhagen.
At a life science incubator.
Nice.
Darling, of Copenhagen, right? You were in
Nice.
Copenhagen on our panel call,
Yes.
right? Weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Did I tell you that
Have
about
you been there?
Copenhagen? Yeah, so I'm an avid racer of sailboats, and I raced in the World Championships, Junior Championships, and Danish Championships in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden.
Oh.
And the Yinglings out of the Danish Royal Yacht Club.
Wow.
Wow, that's something.
Yeah. And I was invited to go Wednesday. Was that yesterday? Yesterday for a regatta this weekend.
Really nice. Okay.
And I couldn't because I had some friends that were coming into town or whatever, but I think I'll go back next year. Yeah, I love Copenhagen. Great memories. I was 15 turning 16 for those races.
But the city has some food even further. So
Everybody goes on their bicycles
yeah,
everywhere.
it's an amazing city.
We were drinking and bike riding.
The same
Is that Clovia over there? Clovia. I love Clovia. You're so nice.
Why did
Clovia's so cute.
Nope.
Because
no, I thought-
no, wear.
still not?
Support.
I
Good
can't
lineup.
hold stuff to these guys.
I know.
To hear me.
Alrighty, well, in the interest of time, we do have one more panelist who is here. Maybe she got stage fright.
She was going to get a tissue.
Well, so first of all, I want to thank you all for coming along and welcome you, and also our panel, who they're all close to my heart because they all have very similar motives to why Amplifier Science was formed at Yale. We have a panel here today who are going to talk about investing in diverse founders, diverse companies. But I'm going to hand it over to Brad, and I'm going to let you guys take it away.
Usually I'm loud enough not to need a speaker, so.
It's a small room. The only problem is that there's,
Can you guys hear that now?
for the overflow room, that's...
Gotcha.
That's where everybody is.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Robling. I work for Eli Lilly in Indianapolis, our headquarters in Indianapolis. I'm fortunate enough to run our corporate global venture capital group. And for those of you who aren't in the venture capital space, essentially we invest in companies to bring in novel new innovation to keep us very thoughtful about how to be relevant to creating drugs in the next 10 years for human beings around the planet. It's like the best job I've ever had, so I love talking about it. But anyway, so Lilly's connection to sort of investing in the next wave or new innovation, I think what's the title I love? It's investing, funding the new mainstream. Our view of that, and these from the venture space, started probably 2019. Our executive team decided that we were going to create a racial justice fund. And what that fund does, it essentially invests in first-time fund managers, but minority first-time fund managers and women of color, women period. And the question is why? Why did we do that? Well, when we looked at the industry that we've been playing in for the last 15, 20 years, there's one predominant demographic that looks a lot like me. It's white male. 80 to 90% of venture capital partners in the U.S. are male, 75% of which are white. The statistics get a lot worse as you go downstream a little bit in the new mainstream. Less than 5% are Afro-American or black. And Gary, I hope the statistics are right, less than 2%, at least in our world, is right. Latino or Latina. And so what the downstream piece of that is so that's sort of the top of the capital pyramid from new startups, right? And what we think occurs is sort of an unconscious bias. Those individuals, guys again look like me, also invest in startup companies that look a lot like them. So fortunately in the last 3 or 4 years, we've now invested in 8 newly minted venture capital groups, all minority-led, half of which are female-led. We put $150 million of capital, so I think in our minds, real capital behind this effort. And the interesting thing is, for us, it's not just investing in them, it's actually making them successful. Why is that? Because if they're successful, the new mainstream becomes the norm, right? And so that's been very exciting. And the interesting thing is when we looked at the data, in the last 3 or 4 years, 70% of the companies they've invested in have been minority-led, 50% of which have been female-led. Super exciting. Lilly is excited to be on this panel, excited to be investing in the new mainstream. I hope I didn't go over my 3 or 4 minutes here, but I might have. So, Chandra, I'm going to turn it over to you because I think we're talking about each other for a second before I start moderating with these intense questions. Is that okay?
Intense question.
Hello, everyone. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Chandra Roxanne. I am a managing director at Astia. Astia is a firm that is based in San Francisco, and our mission is to level the investment playing field for women entrepreneurs. And we have been pursuing that for 20 years. But in 2018, we had a mea culpa moment. So Astia hangs its hat on removing bias from its investment decision-making process, and we created a proprietary method called the Expert Sift. But in 2018, we asked the entrepreneurs who did not receive funding but yet were qualified through our system to return for a second consideration. and 80% of those women were Black women. And at the time, our portfolio was 35 companies, and not one was founded or led by a Black woman. Digging more deeply into our own data, because we pride ourselves on being a data-driven organization, we found that the disparity was equal regarding Latinas. And so JP Morgan, with the support of JP Morgan, Cisco Systems, and Google for Startup, we ran a pilot to really understand how racial bias entered into our system, how does it manifest itself, how does it manifest itself in the larger ecosystem, and more importantly, what are the correct strategies for helping these women to capture the capital that they need? We released our findings last year. Our CEO went on Bloomberg, admitted our mistake, and what we were committed to do to course correct. And so I was hired last year to take that pilot into its new iteration called the Astia Edge Fund, which will focus on startups that are founded and led by Latinas. And so it's been really fascinating to actually talk to Latinas and talk to Black women and have them tell us, what does that mean to you to level the investment playing field on a very tangible level? And so we have a strategy that we are proud of, and we also have a strategy that has been approved by them. And so we're really much looking forward to continuing to raise the fund. We are actually in the market raising the fund. We have a nice pipeline. And so I'm also looking forward to having the conversation on what it takes to invest in this new mainstream.
I love that. I love all of your words. Is anybody recording this? I mean, Clovia, I'm sure you're taking notes. I'm Alison Malloy. I was an entrepreneur prior to becoming an investor, so I had a startup technology company here in Connecticut, which was fun, and raised VC money and exited that company to Eastman Kodak Company and became an investor. And with Connecticut Innovations, and just for a quick show of hands, because we're in Connecticut, right? How many people here know Connecticut Innovations? Okay, great. Yeah, about half the room. So a second on Connecticut Innovations. We are Connecticut's strategic venture capital arm. We have one LP, which is the state of Connecticut. And we're one of the most active early stage investors according to PitchBook. We do about 100 transactions a year. We put out between 40 to 50 million each and every single year into new startup companies. We have a mandate that there be a presence here in Connecticut since we're backed by the state. And our check sizes are roughly, 500,000 to 1.5 million or so. We used to be split between bioscience and technology, all other. And recently, we've launched 2 new funds, and I lead one of those 2 funds. One of them is the Climate Tech Fund, and the other one is the Future Fund. And the Future Fund is a $50 million fund that is focused specifically on investing in diverse founders, underrepresented, overlooked founders, female, Black founders, BIPOC, Latinas, Latinos, Latinx. I like your pronunciation. I'm gonna have to work on that role. LGBTQ, veterans, etc. So that's the hat that I'm wearing for today. It's a critical hat, as you mentioned, the amount of dollars that don't end up that end up in the white male hands versus others. And then the other hat that I wear is I'm a part of a group called Tidal River that I launched with Annie Lamont, who's our First Lady of Connecticut, and that is a female-led angel investor group here in Connecticut, which just raised its first small micro fund, and we're focused on investing in either Connecticut companies or diverse founders. So that's a little bit about the hats I'll be wearing.
We have 3 mics, so I thought maybe I'd use this one, but well, my name is Gary Acosta. I am the president and co-founder of Latitude Ventures, which is a $100 million venture capital fund that invests exclusively in Latino-led startups, early stage up to Series A. We've been at it for a little bit over a year, maybe closer to 2 years now, and we invest in companies from a wide variety of sectors. I'm also the co-founder of an organization called NAREP, which is the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, an organization we started about 23 years ago, which is now the largest Latino business organization in the United States. And I'm a partner with a gentleman by the name of Sol Trujillo, who's a former Fortune 500 CEO, and Emilio Estefan, Gloria and Emilio Estefan, the three of us started an event called Latitude, the Latitude event, which is sort of like South by Southwest meets the Aspen Ideas Festival. It's a business event focused on the new mainstream. We've been doing that for about 6 years, and it was that event that spawned Latitude Ventures. But I'm just going to talk a second about the term or the phrase, the new mainstream, because it was really our group that coined that phrase. Coming from a business organization who's been in this space for a number of years, I have come to believe that we have framed the issue of diversity not so great, because outside of the people maybe in this room, the business community generally views diversity as a compliance issue, as a regulatory issue, and businesses view compliance and regulation as something that you have to do, not necessarily something that you want to do, something that's part of your cost structure, just sort of the price of doing business, when in fact we are quickly becoming a majority-minority country, and the growth in this country, in terms of our economic growth, is coming largely from these segments, from these new emerging demographics. And it truly is the new mainstream of America. And it's not all that new. The fact is that American culture has been evolving since the very beginning. It has never been static. And so this is just the latest iteration of that evolution. So the term new mainstream hopefully sort of has the sort of impact that we're talking about a growth sector. We're talking about a sector where there is business opportunity for market share and profit. And because we're a business organization, we think the nomenclature matters. And so that's why we coin it as a new mainstream. And hopefully we'll start to, I think, get a better response from some of the bigger players in the business world.
Thank you very much. Quite impressive. I'm a little bit the odd one out because I'm from Copenhagen, Denmark. I am a Chief Innovation Officer in a non-for-profit life science incubator called Bioinnovation Institute. We are $500 million fund funded by the Novo Nordisk Foundation, if anyone knows that. Our mission is to translate amazing science into actual products to meet the unmet need with people and society. And we are doing this by starting up 20 new companies every year. So we're spinning out research projects from the universities, also from over here. We have from MIT, University of Washington, amongst others. And by this, of course, we are trying to help the researchers and the principal investigators in building the new startup and getting a product out on market. But what did we see? When I started 3 years ago, we saw that below 20% of the founders we got in, whether it was from direct from research or whether it was from the startup community, less than 20% were women. So we could see we needed to do something. And you mentioned earlier, Brad, but it's Scandinavia, Denmark, you must be doing so good on the equality thing. And I said, no, we are not. We are actually not. And especially not Denmark. We are really low on the bottom. So we thought, okay, we can do something here. So we started to actually go out and proactively identify the researchers and the principal investigators, giving them this extra hand to make them feel safe, giving them a moderator or someone who they could talk to along the way. But I'm certain we will talk more about how we do it. But just to say that we can do changes if we see injustice as it is, in my book, we can do something to create that change. So I'm really happy to be here today and take part of this discussion. And just so you know, from our end, it's more about bringing females up in the front. I cannot even start to think how it is if you then add that you're Latino or Black American or whatever. I mean, that must just complicate matter even more than only being a woman, if you could put it that way. So I'm all in whatever we can do together here. Oh, and my hope, you asked me in the beginning before we went in, what do you hope to get out of today? And I said that we walk the talk. Because we hear this discussion a lot. So my hope and aspiration for today is that all of us figure out what we can do and walk the talk.
Very helpful. Oops. Fantastic. I got a question for the audience. What do you do if you're the least talented person on a panel? You become the moderator. Okay, that's the key to life on these things. So let me go ahead and keep the mic. I'm going to go in reverse order here. So Trine, I have these this is like the easiest moderator panel I'll ever be on. What does success look like for your team? Because I think we have a very diverse set of places that are affecting the new mainstream. So what does success look like for you guys?
Well, personally,
Personally, or
yeah, no, I'll give you both. From the organization side, it is of course that we're being measured on our capabilities of creating a new startup. So we provide the lab space, we provide the network, we provide the funding and the mentorship. So we are being measured on our capabilities of creating a new company who hopefully will get a Series A or seed funding from a professional VC. So that's all good. That's a clear KPI. But for me, it is personally to work with the female-led startups, which I do. I do that extra hours as well because I'm running a couple of other projects, teams as well. But to see those teams really grow and get, mature into becoming truly entrepreneurs and get a success out of their company. 75% of all our founders are first founders. I mean, they come straight from research or something. That's not only the women, it's in general. So we do a lot of training, and for women, as I said, we do extra, and I do personally extra. So I get really proud and happy when I see they succeed. And they do. We have a really high success rate with our female-led startups.
Fantastic, Gary.
Yeah, so our fund wants the same things that all funds want. We want great returns. We want to invest in companies that are successful, who maybe wouldn't have got the funding otherwise. But here's what I think is the big picture opportunity that we have. So when I started NARP 23 years ago, I went around, I met with a lot of big companies, and I talked to them about what I thought was this tidal wave of Hispanic home buyers that was coming around the corner, and that they needed to prepare for it. They needed to hire accordingly. They needed to have a strategy, a marketing strategy. They needed to have the right products. And everybody nodded their head, and nobody did anything. I mean, that's just the way it was and the way it generally is. And it wasn't until about a decade later that a couple of new companies that were Latino-led achieved scale. And when those companies achieved scale, they started to take market share from some of these big guys. And when that happened, the conversation about the Latino market in the real estate space went from, this is the right thing for us to do, this is an important thing for us to do, to, if we don't do this, we're going to continue to lose market share, and some of us are going to lose our jobs, right? That was a tipping point. And that is the type of scenario that we would like to stimulate as a fund. $100 million is great. It's not enough to change the world, but it has the ability to catalyze and to start a chain reaction that I think could have a long-standing impact on the marketplace.
So let's see, similar to everybody's, we'll just get them out of the way for metric purposes. Success is launching a fund and having and investing in companies that are going to be successful and that create the returns, right? So that's fabulous. But putting that aside, I'd like the fund to be successful so that another fund will be possible, so that we can raise additional funds and do it again, so that this is just the first of many funds that we will do in Connecticut. I'm a big believer in we need to get dollars out to diverse founders, but here's a personal success similar to what you mentioned on, Astia was investing in females, and you think that you're doing all these great things and you're investing in all these females, and then you take a step back and you say, what's the demographics, right? So what I hope is that as we make investments out of this fund, that at the end of the day, there is diversity amongst our founders, and that it doesn't end up looking like either many white females or many black males. And so I really want to ensure that as everybody has a new idea or a company, that they send them our way, and I'm just hoping that we get a good mix, because that's important.
Wonderful. So it's twofold. I would say, so my CEO sort of set success for us. And that was, we want $500 million under management for Black women and Latinas. And the reason why I share that is because part of the success that I would like to see in venture capital is that more money, more assets under management are truly under management by diverse founders, or excuse me, diverse fund managers like myself and like Gary and like other panelists here. And so that we know that there is a correlation between the amount of money that gets to diverse founders and the amount of money that's under management by diverse fund managers. And so I would like to see that as a success. But the other sort of non-financial, non-capital success for me is a change in consciousness. Being able to directly and even indirectly counter the narratives of how people see us. And it comes out in even the questions that were asked, to Gary's point about looking at this as compliance or regulation rather than, no, we are citizens, we are global economic actors, we are architects not only of the US economy, but the global economy, and we are equal to every other human being walking the earth, and we have something to contribute because the earth belongs to us as well. And so to be able to shift the consciousness and how we're even perceived when people see us without us even saying anything, that to me will be successful. Or that is the definition of what success is.
I'm not supposed to follow you. I'm not even sure the moderator is supposed to have an opinion, but let me just tell you what Lily's view of success looks like just for a second. I always have funny stories I think are funny. No one else does. But one of the first funds we invested in was actually a good friend of mine. She ran a corporate venture capital group in the Silicon Valley in the 2000s. And I was talking to her about what our goal should be. And she's like, are you an idiot? Like, your goal should make us, or help us be financially successful. I was like, wow, that seems very capitalistic, Eileen. She goes, well, look at you, Brad, you're a capitalist. That's a bad joke, too. But no, we made it very simple. We wanted to make the venture funds very successful because the reason why we think that's important is so we can get away from people viewing people of color for whatever, for quota reasons or whatever. These individuals can have returns like people who historically have generated returns. And because we had tossed out so many different ideas and metrics and numbers and things like that, and she looked at me dead in that face and said, no, I want to be as good as anybody else, and why would you have any other goal? That actually is our goal, and it is to actually have the funds be successful. And that, I think, will permanently put them on the map, and hopefully, I told Trine this earlier, our secondary goal that I'm not supposed to say in front of this room, are we being recorded, by the way? Is to not exist in 20 years or 15 or pick your date in the future. Why? Because then we were successful, us and others, in the whole ecosystem, because then it's ubiquitous. There's no longer 80% numbers. It's something that represents the new mainstream or the new demographic. And it's a tough one to tell someone, but that's actually our goal, too. That's a secondary goal, is to not actually exist. How many people create things to not exist, right? But I think that's an important, at least for us, an important thing. All right, I'm not supposed to talk anymore. Let me get back to the more interesting people. Now, another question that's, they call them softballs, right? If you're a U.S. softball player. What's the biggest challenge that your teams have faced in the last few years? I know there's probably 100 answers, but I'm going to start in the middle this time. Alison, can you, here.
Yeah, sure. So, what's that? Challenges. I mean, I think I also kind of hit a challenge as I was trying to talk about my success, on ensuring that we're investing, across the board. But one of the things, I'm going to connect them together, success and challenge. I'm hoping that we're going to create a fabulous ecosystem here. I'm spending a lot of time over the last several months getting to know co-investors. We had a call, actually. You had the call with one of my colleagues, and then, we're going to get some more calls. But meeting other co-investors, so that's where you are able to either syndicate deals for our founders or share deals or find additional founders. I'm hoping, the challenge will become the success. The challenge is we don't have enough of an ecosystem yet, right? I'm excited about what we're going to be creating in Connecticut. And it even starts here. It starts, the amazing multicultural aspect even here at Yale. So creating the ecosystem, trying to create relationships with co-investors, trying to ensure a challenge, right, is not just investing in the entrepreneurs, but trying to support them. So Connecticut Innovations has EIR programs where if a company's in our portfolio, we'll try to put an executive in residence in there to help with a project or give dollars towards a grant. So These are challenges that most entrepreneurs have that we're trying to change the story of, not just give money into the fund, but how do we then support them, help them grow, create the relationships, and get more money. And ideally, we'd like to help create generational wealth for our founders, and so that money trickles down to them, their families, their communities, and that they hire more folks in their communities, to get more high-paying jobs. So it's a bit of a challenge and success.
Let me do that. So,
Yeah, you're in the middle. You got to go.
so raising capital for, a company, a fund that invests exclusively in Latino-led startups probably would not have been possible a few years ago, and not in any significant way. And so, one of the, I think, most significant events of the last few years, which was a tragic event, was the George Floyd murder. But that did prompt a big dialogue that needed to happen, and it was happening at the highest levels, and it spawned a lot of these impact funds, which made something like Latitude Ventures possible. So we are the largest Latino-led venture capital fund, I believe, in the United States right now, which also means that there's going to be we're going to have a lot of visibility, and people are going to judge the sector a lot and how we perform as a fund. So we feel the weight of that responsibility, and we also see it as a great opportunity. So we want to find great companies. We don't want to just find companies that would have found funding anyways, right? Because I don't know how big of an impact we're having if we're just getting into companies that, check all the boxes otherwise and would have gotten funding otherwise. So we want to look beyond just what is on the surface and what is obvious, and find those gems that are out there, that we know are out there. And we've already, to some degree, found some that, have the opportunity to be extraordinarily successful with the right opportunity, with the right capitalization structure, with the right mentorship. And that is going to continue to be a challenge for us. But we're feeling pretty optimistic about it right now.
Continue here. So how many are there from universities here, researchers, professors? There are a few here. Good. Because this is one of the issues we have, both when we source great science from the States or from Europe, and that is the lack in numbers of great female professors as well. And this is one of the things we would really like to see is much stronger focus from the universities in terms of supporting their excellent female researchers into becoming professors. And I know MIT is doing parts, but I'm certain Yale is doing something as well. I'm looking at Marek here. But this is something that I really hope we will see much more of. So we have a much larger pool of amazing female scientists who can take the leap into becoming the next entrepreneurs. So that's one thing. The other thing that's also broken a little bit in the value chain or ecosystem is, of course, the VCs. We engage a lot with the venture capital firms, both from the US and from Europe, and we still see this bias against female-led startups. I'm really sad to see that. I mean, the last number I saw was 5% of the VC funding goes to female-led companies in our region. And that's not because there are only 5% female founders there. We have much more. I forgot to say that we have grown the number from below 20% to 40% now in our innovation hub. But so I would say more amazing researcher support from the universities, and then working on the bias with the VCs. And there, I'm completely with you. We just need to show that return on investment is, of course, at least as good for a female-led startup than any other. Of course it is. So my wish here is also that in a few years' time, we don't have to have sessions like this because it's a non-issue. So let's see.
Right.
Oh, you have
Yes, I would like to build on this point because when you think about the funding, the amount of funding that Latinas and Black women get, it is less than 0.5% each. Less than 0.5%. And then when you think about the larger ecosystem of women founders and how much we get in comparison even to men of color, it still is very much less than, I think, 2% now. And so it's that sort of that gender tax that comes. That's been very challenging. And I've been watching my coworkers also raise funds. And so the challenge has been trust, being trusted to not only manage assets, but to even be able to pick entrepreneurs. Like the methodology that I talked about, it's been around for 20 years. As a result of it, Astia has realized 9 acquisitions, 3 IPOs, women-led startups. And yet we're still questioned on our ability to pick companies. We're still questioned on our ability to have the right deal flow. And then when you bring in, well, I want to invest in Latinas and Black women. Well, are you really going to see, are they really building businesses that are scalable? Really? Or is this an impact fund? Or do you even have enough deal flow? Will you even be able to find them? And so just those conversations that they exist, and guess what? Here are some examples of companies that have been exited, that have experienced an exit or an acquisition within the last 5 years, led by Black women and Latinas, but still not trusting the data that we have. And that's something that came up in our research, the mistrust that people have just because of melanin or gender. And that's the real challenge. Because that then affects the amount of money that we're able to raise and then that we're able to deploy.
Really good stuff. Mark, I just want to time check. Are we saving 10 or 15 for questions? I want to be thoughtful. Is that okay? Okay. Well, maybe we'll just pivot a little bit, and maybe we'll try to do our best to take it from the eyes of the audience, and maybe I can go through the panel, and maybe any suggestions on a personal level. We have female, minority, potential entrepreneurs, potential scientists in the audience, maybe some others. Maybe just some advice on personal journeys, because I know your backgrounds. I was intimidated reading about them, but you guys have tremendous experience and have a lot with individuals, not just the companies that you've been a part of and the investments you've made, but individuals. Any advice to the people in the room in terms of the journey? Just
No, I think. Is it on? Yeah. So I am getting the question, even in Denmark, how I could take up big positions. I've been the CEO as well a couple of times, and now I'm a executive officer still. And I still get questions from even the young females in our community, in the life science community, how I did it. And I have been so surprised that it's still an issue, to be honest. And then I started to think, how come? Because when I'm fairly old. I won't even tell you how old. But back then it was really not an issue because I had a really strong mom. So one advice is to find that role model in your life. I think if that's one thing that can change your life, it's to have a role model or 2 or 3, because you will maybe need different role models along your life, depending on where you are and what you want to do. But do find that role model. I mean, that has been the biggest game changer in my life, at least. I was extremely lucky with my mom.
Very lucky. That's great. So I would say, double down on your strengths. Your diversity is a strength. And I'll give you an example on a practical standpoint. When you invest only in Latino-led startups, you try to start to understand what is common among them. What are some of the common challenges they tend to have, and what are some of the common strengths? And one of the strengths that we recognized was that we are in this country going through a massive demographic transition. As I said before, we're becoming a majority-minority country very quickly. And people who are bilingual, people who can navigate in and out of different cultural settings seamlessly, have an advantage in the business world, in a global business stage, so to speak. Some of our startups, we've noticed, have they either are immigrants themselves and have relationships in Latin America, and or they have family there or whatnot. But they're very comfortable moving back and forth between Latin America and the United States. So they have talent typically that works for their companies, engineering talent that can be sometimes had for a fraction of the cost of what we have to pay for that kind of talent here in the United States. And there's some extraordinary talent down there. My company right now, which is the NARA platform, 30% of our employees are in Latin America. And so this is a strength. This is a competitive advantage that a lot of these startups have. So we encourage our folks to double down on those strengths. Understand where you're strong, understand where you need some additional support, find a mentor, find a way to improve your weaknesses, but double down on your strengths, definitely.
I would say that some advice that I would give is around perseverance and pivoting. So I'll just take a second on both of those. So, for everybody here at this conference, right, we all are trying to accomplish something, but to speak to entrepreneurs, right, we're trying to create something, we're trying to grow something, and you could knock on a door and you could hear no. And I'll say a couple of things about that. When I was growing up, my father taught me that no is not, an answer. It's just an objection, or it's just a starting point, or it's just, a conversation. And you just say, oh yeah, I agree, I hear you, but, and you just work right around it, right? So I think that perseverance is important. I think pivoting is important. So you could have an idea that you think is the right one that nobody wants to fund. Well, maybe you need to pivot a little bit. So talk to people. How do you pivot? How do you get there? If you hear no, are you even speaking with the right people, right? Don't waste your time. Your time is so valuable. So don't go pitch a fund, don't go pitch a bioscience, just like you wouldn't go pitch a bioscience fund for, perhaps a prop tech company. Just know who your audience is and know who you're asking for money. And if somebody says no, ask them if they have an introduction for you, or a resource for you, or a different door to go through. So I think people generally want to help people, and nobody really ever wants to say no. So, just pivot, persevere, keep going. And because I just got to call out Clovia, because I love her so much right here. Clovia, she perseveres, she perseveres, she perseveres. She comes, she listens to me speak, guiding her all the time. She's going to keep persevering, and she has a company right now, but this is going to be the first of 5 companies that she's going to have. So just keep on going.
So this work that I'm doing at Astia is teaching me 2 things. One is humility, and the second one is audacity. And those 2 things are necessary for building relationships. I was very clear with my team, and I said, yes, you hired a Black woman to do this work, but do not think that I can go out and just talk to Black women without earning and building relationships and earning trust, because they're watching me and they ask me the tough questions. And there are times where I have to say, you know what, let me get back to you on that. Or, you know what, let me take that back. At Astia, we do pride ourselves on having very difficult conversations. Our CEO says, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so the other thing that I have also done is with the Latinas. I have asked, for advice of how do I build relationships with the Latinas so that they understand as well that I'm here for them, that this is not performance DEI, we're going to walk the walk. And so I would say really, really, really build relationships. Build relationships with people that you normally wouldn't build relationships with, but do that in the spirit of humility, because you're going to make mistakes, but also audacity.
And you never know when you're going to go back to those relationships.
No, that's good.
Whether it's that company, the next one.
Yeah. Or they will refer you.
Yes.
Or not refer you and say, stay away from them.
Can I just talk about relationships for a second? Do you mind? You just made me think of something really cool. When I was first talking about some of these things, a gentleman that I know pretty well that used to run private equity for Merrill Lynch, still a very young guy, told me to stop using the phrase access to capital. He says, and I said, why? What should I use instead? He says, use the phrase connection to capital. And I asked him, I said, what's the difference? And he says, I'll tell you the difference. He says, tomorrow, some 27-something-year-old white kid is going to raise $10 million for an idea that he has for an app. And he says, and that doesn't happen because he has access. That happens because he has a connection. And that nuance is very, very important. Because I do believe that success, at least in our society, is a factor of what you know and who you know. So those relationships are incredibly important.
Can I build on that?
Yes. We're on to something.
Yes, because you talked about nomenclature being very important. And actually, when I started reaching out to both entrepreneurs and LPs, I literally changed the word to I would like to chat with you or meet with you to I look forward to connecting with you. And I got my response rate went through the roof. So connection, absolutely. Amen to that.
All right, the energy's high. Now we're going to turn it back to the energy of the panel's high. Let me turn it over. I'm happy to run this mic up somewhere. Does anyone have a question for the panel? I don't have anybody planted, so someone's going to have to. I don't do well sitting down, so this is good.
This question's for Chandra. I'm curious from an organizational perspective, apart from the algorithm, what do you think were the enabling factors within the Astia Edge Fund that allowed 35 investments in specifically white women and not women of color?
So what literally, this is for our angel portfolio, is it literally was the trust. What they noticed when they had a what they call come to Jesus conversation with their investors and said, what is going on here? And the word mistrust came up repeatedly. I don't trust the numbers. I don't trust the projections. I don't trust the competence. They didn't say competence, but the educational background. And so they really had to push back and say, never, with our white entrepreneurs, we never hear the word trust or mistrust. It might be, it might be exaggerated or too ambitious or too audacious, but never trust. And so that was one of the main reasons was the mistrust.
How do you rectify? Is there like cultural competence? Like, what do you do with an organization for that?
So there's a couple of things that I have noticed that they've talked about that they've done. Like with that conversation, they began talking about putting that aside and how would they go about changing the questions that they're asking, and even just bringing it to their awareness that they're using this word helped a lot. They have removed people, quite frankly. I've seen that. And the other thing that I noticed, so what we do is we have blind pitches, so the investors do not see the entrepreneurs, but we are there in these pitches to ask questions to counter. Whenever if something slips through, we will ask a question to counter to get the conversation back on track. And we have had conversations about bringing this up even during our advisor. We meet once a month with our ASSIA advisors and bringing this conversation up regularly, not just that one time. And so we're still in the process of like really formalizing it, but just what we've done so far, we've seen changes.
Great job, guys. But I just, as a female-led startup, what tips do you guys have for fundraising? As much as we shouldn't have to conform, would you suggest like adding a male to the starting? Everyone shaking their head.
I'm hoping to say yes, but it's fine.
Keep going, Flavia.
Yeah, but essentially, yes, as much as we shouldn't have to, the reality of it, because there are so many biases, unfortunately, would you advise like someone like myself, I'm a solo founder, and yeah, I just want to know your take on that.
Go ahead.
So I would say if you're a solo founder, you should find yourself a co-founder.
Yes.
And you should take the best one you can get, whether it's a male or female. So figure out what complementary skills you would need to be a good, wholesome leadership team. But it's being alone in it can be really tough. And that is not only because you're a woman. It's just tough to be a single founder. So find yourself a co-founder regardless.
We get this question a lot. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to answer this from the audience, but so with our 8 funds, we've had a lot of experience with this, and we had the same advice: get the best team that you can, that you're happy with, actually, that you think complements your skill sets. I think mathematically, even the groups we've found probably are 30-40% male. I mean, there's just it's a good diversity even in the funds they've created. So we agree. Find the best people for you. Sorry, go ahead, Alison.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that I twitch because I don't want you to go find a male just to find a male. So, same as you're saying, you should surround yourself, you should think about strengths and weaknesses and what offsets you, right? And get the best person for that. And it is true that sometimes a solopreneur, I say if you can't convince one extra person that your idea is crazy enough for them to join you, then although my partner over here, Akira, he likes solopreneurs. But if you're bumping into problems with funding, I wouldn't also just think about it, is it because I'm female or is it because I'm this? I would ask the people that you have pitched, what would you want to see or what would you need to see in order to consider an investment and or consider introducing me to somebody who invests in businesses like me, and hear what they have to say.
Yeah, I would,
I echo everything that has been said, but I would also say, the reality is that, co-ed teams do raise more money than all female teams. Okay. Get strategic about the LPs that you want in your cap table. Get really strategic about that. Because you want to be able to disqualify people as fast as you can. So you can get about the business of getting your capital, but then scaling your business.
We got 2 questions.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And I think we'll need to be careful of our time, as I think they were opening the doors intentionally.
Oh, intentionally?
Maybe another 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one, and who was second?
It's on. So do you tend to find when you're investing in women, and especially women of color, that maybe they're not getting the funding, just to your point, Alison, maybe they're not getting the funding because of scalability, or like their idea that they have is an investment type of idea? Do you tend to find that often?
No. I don't know if I understand your question completely. I think there's a lot of fabulous companies out there led by women of color that are scalable and are fabulous. So that's out there. That's to Chandra's point as well. I think that if a woman of color is not receiving capital and they are questioning whether or not it's because of themselves or because of the company is scalable, I think it's really good to ask that question. And I think to trust, it's really important to say to the person that you're pitching to, if they say no, say, listen, I really need to learn. I want to grow. I want to persevere. Can you help me understand what would I need to pivot in order to, get capital? But there's a lot of women of color, fabulously scalable companies.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been seeing is being able to, because some of the businesses are so complex, literally, just being able to break it down and clearly communicate the business and how, like, your GTM strategy and how, like, your model, just being able to break it down for investors who may not be in that vertical, that is really key. Because if you can do that clearly, we will thank you. That's like a positive thing, but that's one of the things that we have been seeing is just doing a really clear pitch. Well, yeah, this is for the VC space.
Yeah. No, but I mean, if you're feeling like people who are women of color that don't have companies that are venture backable, there's a lot of additional money out there as well, right? I mean, here in Connecticut, we have grants, we have, a boost fund, we have, other types of funding vehicles. So I think knowing what kind of business you have and what kind of capital you want is also important.
I think we started a lot of conversations here that could continue outside in the corridor. Clearly, we are overstaying our welcome. But thank you so much for your engagement and everybody's contribution.
Brad, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Fantastic. You're wonderful. Please connect with us. I'm going to have our team connect with you guys.
Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure.
This is my partner here. He's running to a light.
Thank you.
Yeah, just let's stay in touch about I think I'm going to take a break. We don't check the index or anything like that. 2 or 3 and
I mean, we are getting into an area where that could be a little bit of a challenge.
I tried to be selective. So, anyway, I'm just going to probably just take a chill out. I will see you later.
Thank you.
I hope you stay around today.
Obviously, it's a flip reaction of mine. It's like, every single time. We could make this, hey, here's what we do. Anybody just want to swap this next question? I'm like sitting here and I'm like taking my notes, and then between these sessions, I'm doing designs for oh my god.
Yeah.
So many different things going on.
Nice to meet you. Hey, I guess I'm not on the panel right now.
Still Wagner, very nice to meet you.
But let's step out a little bit because it looks like there's a new panel. We want to get out of their way. Do you want what I have?
I want it. No, I think this is mine. Sorry.
Let's get out of their way. I was like, no, she's okay, well, I might have to step back.
Mine's really way on the back end. It's like, yeah, it doesn't go on the echo. I know, they get, I've been on police eyes. Somebody is,
Hey, I'm Mel. How are you?
Hey, Mel, very nice to meet
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Hi, how are you? Good. Nice to meet you.
I'll give you a mic. I'll give you a mic. Oh, that's right here. And then I think we could have
Get it in order. No, I thought you were trying to. I gotta be careful. Usually would give it in your hand, but I gotta be a little more careful. I know, I'm a joker.
Hi, I'm Mel. I'm going to get it out.
Oh my God! How you doing? Good. How are you? Nice to see you.
talk with them next week. It's cool. Absolutely. They're great. You know,
Okay. Do we have a tape for everybody now?
like a gunshot response.
Oh, yeah,
You know, hang We'll see where it goes. You get a hug too. Give me some of that.
It's been a long ride.